A large tub of movie theater popcorn costs somewhere between 50 cents and $1 to make. It regularly sells for 7, 8, sometimes $9. That's a markup that can run past 1000% on a product that's mostly air and roughly $2 of ingredients. One theater manager who spoke to a reporter years ago put a specific number on it. A monster tub that sold for $6 cost the business about 48 cents to produce. By the end of this video, you'll understand why theaters defend that markup so aggressively that in one country, the argument over a bag of cookies eventually reached the Supreme Court. Here's what almost nobody realizes walking in to buy a ticket. Movie theaters barely make money from the movie itself. When you buy a ticket, a large chunk of that money, often 60 to 70% or more during a film's opening weeks, goes straight to the movie studio that made the film. The theater is essentially renting the film from the studio, and the split heavily favors the studio, especially early in a film's run when demand and leverage are both at their highest. That arrangement isn't new or arbitrary. It dates back to a long-standing industry system where distributors charge a sliding percentage that starts brutally high in a film's first week or two and gradually eases the longer a movie stays on the schedule. Theaters accept those terms because they need access to the biggest releases to draw anyone in the door at all. And that need is exactly the leverage studios have used for decades. In 2018, the chain Cinemark reported roughly $1.8 billion in ticket revenue and paid out about $1 billion of that directly to distributors in fees before a single employee got paid or a single light bulb got replaced. Concessions work almost the opposite way. Every dollar spent on popcorn, soda, and candy stays entirely with the theater. No studio gets a cut. That same year, Cinemark's concession sales brought in about $1.1 billion and cost the company only around $181 million to deliver, an estimated profit margin near 84%. Popcorn alone is usually the single most profitable item on the menu, with markups that industry analysts have put anywhere between 900 and over 1,275%, depending on the location and size. It adds up to something genuinely strange. A 2023 survey found the average American moviegoer spends more at the snack counter alone than they do on the ticket that got them through the door in the first place. This is the same razor and blades logic that shows up everywhere. From game consoles to printer ink, sell the primary product near cost or accept a thin margin on it and make the real money on what people buy alongside it once they're already committed and in the door. It's a pattern that repeats constantly once you know to look for it in industries that otherwise have nothing in common. The head of one major theater chain put it almost exactly this bluntly in an interview years ago, saying that without concession revenue, movie tickets themselves would have to cost closer to $20. There's an old industry saying that captures the same idea even more directly. Find a good location to sell popcorn, then build a movie theater around it. That math explains something that used to just seem like an annoyance: why theaters are so strict about banning outside food and drinks. It isn't really about mess or allergies or security, even though those are the official reasons usually printed near the door. Concessions can account for something like a third to nearly half of a theater's total revenue, while contributing an even larger share, sometimes closer to half of its actual profit, since so much of ticket money is already spoken for before the theater sees a cent of it. Every snack smuggled in past the ticket counter is revenue the business had already planned around and was counting on to cover the electricity bill, the staff, and the rent. In India, that math turned into an actual legal battle, one that stretched on for years and eventually escalated well beyond a single lawsuit. In 2018, a Mumbai filmmaker named Janendra Baxi watched ushers stop an elderly couple at a multiplex and confiscate a pack of cookies they'd brought from home. His lawyer later described the daily reality bluntly: bags searched, snacks thrown out, so multiplexes could sell popcorn worth a few rupees for a price tag more than 50 times higher. Some theaters, Baxi's Petition noted, had even started installing call buttons on seats so customers could order concessions without leaving their spot, treating snack sales as a core part of the experience rather than a side offering. Baxi filed a public interest petition in the Bombay High Court, challenging outside food bans as unreasonable. Around the same time, protests broke out at multiplexes in Maharashtra, some of them turning physical, including one incident where activists confronted and manhandled a theater manager over the issue. Under pressure, the Maharashtra government eventually announced that multiplexes in the state would have to allow outside food starting that August. The fight didn't stop there. A separate case in Jammu and Kashmir produced a high court ruling that also sided with moviegoers, striking down outside food bans in that region too, on the grounds that restricting food choice inside a cinema infringed on basic consumer rights. Theater chains and industry associations weren't willing to let that stand and appealed all the way to India's Supreme Court. The country's highest court ultimately overturned the lower ruling entirely, deciding that cinemas are private property, that no one is forced to buy anything once inside, and that theater owners have the right to set their own terms of entry, including banning outside food altogether. Full stop. Years of protests, a public interest lawsuit, and multiple regional court rulings ended with the business model winning outright at the highest level available to challenge it, and cinema chains keeping precisely the leverage they'd been fighting to protect the entire time. None of this is unique to India either. The exact same outside food bans exist at nearly every major American chain, and they've faced their own scattered legal challenges over the years, usually framed as antitrust complaints or unfair trade practices, filed by frustrated customers who felt the policy was less about safety and more about protecting a captive market. None of them have gained anywhere near the traction India's case eventually did. American courts have generally landed in the same place India's Supreme Court eventually did, treating the policy as a private business setting reasonable terms for entry, not a violation of anyone's rights. What made India's fight different wasn't the legal theory, it was the scale of public anger behind it, loud and visible enough to reach the country's highest court. None of this makes movie theaters uniquely predatory. Selling the primary product near cost and profiting on what surrounds it is a legitimate, common business strategy, and without it, plenty of theaters would likely have to raise ticket prices sharply or close entirely, especially the smaller independent ones already operating on thin margins. Some theater owners have said as much publicly, insisting they aren't getting rich off $8 popcorn, they're just staying open because of it, one screen and one snack counter at a time. But it does mean the popcorn stand was never really an afterthought, some side hustle bolted onto the real business of showing films. It's closer to the engine the entire building runs on, and for at least one country's legal system, defending that engine turned out to matter enough to fight for, all the way to the top, against the exact people the fee was being charged to, and in the end, to win.